Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest remembers everything since he was a young child due to a condition called hyperthymesia, and he is the author of numerous books, although the interview in this episode focuses mainly on his book, Heal Your Memories, Change Your Life, which is the first in his Heal Your Memories nonfiction series. His name is Frank Healy, and my interview with Frank will follow the teleportation sound. Frank Healy, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes, I'm Frank Healy, and I'm one of about 100 people who has hyperthymesia, or superior autobiographical memory. And I've written some books on healing your past, and I'm also a licensed professional counselor on the state of New Jersey. So I'm here to talk about memory and healing your past. And by the way, what that means is I remember every day of my life since I was 6 years old, and I'm now 64. Means the day of the week, the weather where I was, personal and news events for every day for 58 and a half years.
What motivated you to become a professional counselor and life coach?
Well, what it was, having the memory that I have, at first people might think, oh, that's really neat. You can remember all the good things. Well, I can also remember all the bad days in my life and I wanted to learn how to let go of at least the feelings from the bad memories. Because I'm not going to let go of the episodes or the memories. So I started learning about it and wanted to help other people, like people with depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. And I also like helping people work toward their goals. So hence being a licensed counselor and life coach.
Without spoiling too much of your book, which is called Heal Your Memories, Change Your Life, what is it about?
Well, what I did was, it's actually the first of a self-help trilogy called Heal Your Memories. And what I did was I combined exercises to heal your past, along with many stories of people who have overcome things from the past, traumatic events, but are now happy and thriving. Like, some of the events included school bullying, workplace bullying, head injuries, and career-altering injuries, as well as rape. So all kinds of things where people had difficulties, but they overcame them and are now happy and thriving. And then in between all these stories are exercises that you can do, kind of like just getting in a meditative state and visualizing certain things to help the reader let go of the pain from past memories and hence become more happy and thriving in their lives.
What is it like remembering every day of your life since you were 6 years old?
Well, it used to be a mixed blessing, like as I mentioned before, remembering the good and the bad, but I've turned it into a lot of fun. Like, I've had fun entertaining at parties, and I was studied at the University of California to see if there's any scientific basis for my memory. And but I certainly am never bored in my life, because there's always, even if there's nothing to do, there's memories to look back on. So it's been a lot of fun and a lot of mental gymnastics all the time. But I think it's also important that even though my mind floods with memories all the time, I'm still a happy person. I don't get overly serious and feel weighted down or anything. And so it's actually been fun having this.
Do dates and facts run through your mind all the time? And if so, how do you handle that?
Well, yes, it's right. They do. Dates and facts go through my mind. And on any given date, I'll start thinking about past things that happened on this same day of the year in different years and different weather. For instance, We're recording this on Monday, November 11th, 2024. And I remember on Wednesday, November 11th, 1987, we had some snow in the Philadelphia area. And so I re and it's the one thing that I had to learn to do is focus, because with all those days when I was a kid and even as a teenager, having all those dates and facts going on in my head kind of made it hard for me to focus on what's going on right in front. And so I had learned to pay attention in school. Of course, memorizing all the information in school was a piece of cake. And I was a pretty good student. And it's also, I had to learn how to focus when people are talking. So I wasn't real talkative as a kid because it was hard to pay attention to conversation. But I've learned to do that. So now I have all these facts going through all the time, but I'm still able to live a pretty normal life. I've been married for 15 years and have friends and family. I live down in the Jersey Shore area, and I enjoy the beach and all that it entails living down here.
How does your memory affect you socially, and what was school like for you with your memory? I know you touched a little bit on that in the previous question.
Well, school was certainly easy to memorize the information, and it wasn't until around the middle of high school, my junior year, when I also learned how to think abstractly, which is certainly an important skill for psychology and counseling. Be able to piece together things about a client. So, so it was kind of like easy and hard at the same time. Easy to memorize, but sometimes hard to pay attention. Like I still had to do my homework, and and socially, I I like people and always wanted to be sociable, but it wasn't until my college years when I learned how to really pay attention to what people were saying and get the flow of a conversation. So it was, and one thing that's positive socially, if I meet somebody who, and maybe meet them a second time and they don't know that I have this memory, I can often flatter them by remembering their birthday or remembering a bunch of things about them, like what kind of work they do, and whether they're married and have kids and what some of their interests are. So in the past, it was not so good socially, but in my adult life, it's been great socially. And I enjoy it when people are firing dates at me because I always get it right.
What motivated you to become a writer?
Well, that's another thing I was good at school was writing. I was good at writing stories and had a good imagination. And I decided, by writing, I could reach more people than with my counseling and coaching. Like anybody could read my books and benefit from them. Now, I've written the self help trilogy, and I've also written books on emotional intelligence. And last year, I wrote a book called Stress Free Success: How to Pursue Your Goals, but also keep yourself stress free. So, and so I thought I can reach more people. And in 2020, I published a novel, The Unquiet Sea. It's about, like, I had studied on an online course how to write a novel, how there has to be tension and there has to be a problem that the protagonist either solves or doesn't solve, and a lot of drama during the crisis. So, Unquiet Sea, it's a novel about a man who has a memory like me. He lives in a beachfront house and sees his patients there. But in 1 week, in August of 2011, between the earthquake and Hurricane Irene, and he also finds out that an ex young female patient is trying to sue him for inappropriate touching. And his fiance gets cold feet, and it's how he overcomes all of that. So, so it's a combination of wanting to reach more people and also, wanting to do my creative outlet. And I currently have a book that'll be published by the end of this year, 2024 called Happy Every Day. It's about how to be happy, not just on the weekends or when you're on a vacation or during the holidays, but how to be happy more with your everyday life. So, I've written, all told, over 20 books since 2007 when my first one came out. And my first one was a memoir about what it was like having my memory. Originally, it was entitled Living with a Phenomenal Memory. Now, in 2018, after I had had more experiences, like being studied at the university, and I wrote I wrote a revised edition called Who Could Forget. And by the way, all of these books are available on my Amazon page, and I'm working on a new website called Healy's Healing. Since I have the perfect last name to be a healer, Healy, I starting a website on that. And it should be up probably by the end. We can still go to it, and it should be finished with construction actually by the end of this week.
I should note that when I was writing down interview questions for this interview, I was only aware of Heal Your Memories, Change Your Life. That was the only book of yours that I was aware of at that time. So you've written quite a few books.
Yes, I have written quite a few, and a lot of my ideas come when I'm going about my everyday life, like maybe commuting to and from work or walking on the beach, or but then I'll get to Word document and write, or WordPad, and write down the ideas, and then develop books from there.
My next question is about the writing craft in general. What is your best advice for someone who has trouble focusing on writing because of anxiety and/or having trouble escaping one's own thoughts and memories running through one's mind all the time?
Well, I think it's important, and I advise these to give the same input to some of my ADHD clients who have attention problems, attention deficit disorder. And first, when you sit down to write, take a few deep breaths, like in for the count of 5, hold for 5, and out for 5, and do it about 10 times. And then give yourself a little pep talk in your head, like for the next hour or 2 hours, or however long you're going to be sitting there working on it. All I'm going to focus on is this material. I'm not going to focus on things I'm worried about or focus on weekend plans. I'm just going to, and for students, I tell them, don't be sitting there worrying about what kind of a grade you're going to get when you're studying or when you're in the classroom. Just focus on the material. And I think most of us have a higher capacity to be able to direct our thought and attention than we think we do. Now, for people with attention deficit, they might need the help of Strattera or Adderall, some medications for that. But I think it's, and sometimes worries or disturbances can actually be fodder for writing something. Like maybe someone might write some poignant poetry if they're feeling depressed or anxious. So there's, ways to channel that into constructive channels.
Before I ask my next question, I'm going to make a note to our listeners to if you have mental health problems, please consult a physician before obtaining any antidepressant or anti-anxiety or other mental health medications, because those have to be prescribed, and there can be side effects. Not every mental health medication is right for everyone with a mental health issue.
It's a really good point. Yes, please do that.
My next question: what are the easiest and hardest aspects of writing books for you?
Well, ironically, and I know I'm not the only writer who experiences this, the hard part is disciplining to sit down and write. It's like there's always something better to do. I mean, something that would be more fun in the moment, let's say. So what I usually do to handle that is I'll sit down and think about, sort of visualize, but mostly get myself into the feeling state of how great it'll be when the book's published and I'm getting good reviews from people saying it helped them and that the money's coming in. And so I'll do that. And that gets me motivated to do it. And the easy part is coming up with ideas. I mean, my mind, just like it can flow with dates and facts, it can flow with creative ideas. So that's the easy part. And I often get help with all the details, the formatting and all that stuff that I find kind of drudgery. So I get help with that. But getting it down and coming up with the ideas is definitely the fun part.
Got two more questions.
Sure.
Are all your books self-published, traditionally published, or hybrid published, or have you used different publishing methods for your books?
Yes, well, it's yeah, they're all self-published. So Amazon and some of them are on Nook and e EPUB. So I know self-publishing now. If I ever get a deal for a book, for a traditional publisher, I will go for it. So if any traditional publishers or publishing agents are listening to this, please feel free to contact me.
My last question, besides writing, what do you do in your free time?
Well, in the summertime, really from about May through mid-October, I'll swim in the ocean. And my mother-in-law has a house in the Jersey town of Stone Harbor, right on the bayfront. So I'll swim in the bay too. And sometimes I'll fish. And I like to read novels and psychology books and spending time with my wife, watching movies and different things. So it's a lot of, and it's probably not much of a stretch to imagine that I like going to bars and playing trivia because I have so many facts in my head. It's, people generally, I mean, I don't know everything that they might ask as a question, but people kind of like having me on their team.
Frank, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were an awesome guest, and I hope you remember this podcast appearance for many years to come.
Oh, yes, I'll remember it. And I'll remember it was Monday, November 11th, 2024.
I do not have the exceptional memory that Frank does, but I will always remember interviewing him. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright 2024, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.